When a single date's announcement becomes the spark for a national conversation, you know something bigger is happening. On a recent service, Bishop David Oyedepo, founder and presiding bishop of Living Faith Church worldwide, the ministry popularly known as Winners Chapel, officially announced the dates for Shiloh 2025.
Shiloh 2025 comes up December 9 to 14. And the theme is Breaking New Ground.
December 9th through the 14th. The theme, Breaking New Grounds. For millions of believers around the world, that line alone, Breaking New Grounds, is enough to stir expectation, faith, and an urgent sense of preparation. But with the official calendar now set and the worldwide invitation sent, another headline began to make the rounds. Bishop David Abioye, once the visible and trusted vice president of Living Faith Church, is unlikely to participate at Shiloh this year. And because Abioye was long seen by many as one of Bishop Oyedepo's closest colleagues and a stalwart of the commission, his absence, or potential absence, is being read by some as a quiet fracture in a very public family. So we open with a question that's on everyone's lips. Is this a simple scheduling reality for a newly independent pastor? Or is there something more charged under the surface? A restriction, an instruction, or a subtle reshaping of loyalties? In the next few minutes we'll walk through the context, Abioye's long service, the retirement that changed everything, the launch of his new ministry, and the swirling reports that follow. We'll look at the known facts, the rumors circulating online, and the sober interpretations that thoughtful observers keep returning to. Above all, we'll keep one principle front and center. Where facts end, speculation must be labeled as such. To understand why anyone cares whether Bishop Abioye attends Shiloh, you have to understand the history. Bishop David Abioye is not a newcomer. 4 decades he served as vice president of Living Faith Church, walking alongside Bishop David Oyedepo in ministry leadership, administration, pulpit ministry, and the pastoral oversight of a global network. To many members, Abioye was a father figure, a visible symbol of continuity and steadiness, the calm complement to the founder's prophetic thunder. His name, his counsel, and his presence carried weight. Then came October 2024. In line with Living Faith's internal rules the church says are designed to keep the commission healthy and sustainable, both Bishop Abioye and Bishop Thomas Aramu were formally retired from active leadership.
My joy is meeting with God's servant Bishop Oyedepo, who has been a great blessing to my life in terms of offering brotherhood, shepherdhood, apostleship, great lessons, great motivation. It's not a departure from relationship. Like I always tell people, my journey with Bishop Oyedepo began informally on relationship. The years of service is formal and it's normal. The official engagement has a lifespan. So relationship continues, but it's just an exit from the systemic policy and provision. And so relationship continues, and which is what I believe should happen just anywhere. Relationship cannot...
These retirements were explained by the church as part of an institutional retirement policy tied to age and tenure. For an institution that has grown into a worldwide movement, the leaders argued that transitions are part of organizational health. But retirement is never a purely administrative act. In the life of a spiritual movement, it has emotional, relational, and symbolic consequences. For years Abioye had been the face of dependable leadership. For many members, his retirement created a hole, a sense that one apostolic season had come to a close. Within months of stepping down, Bishop Abioye launched a new ministry, Living Word Conquerors Global Assembly. For observers, that move created fresh questions. Was this a natural next chapter? An obedient response to a fresh call? Or was it a response to frustration with the forced end of a season? Whatever the motive, the public reaction was immediate. Abioye's new ministry attracted attention, crowds, and headlines. Then came Shiloh 2024. Abioye, who once would have been expected to be present for the Commission's annual prophetic gathering, was notably absent. That absence underscored how the landscape had shifted. Where once the old guard appeared on the platform together, now there were vacant seats and new names. And in the space left by absence, questions began to multiply. Those questions were not just theological or organizational, they were relational. People began to ask, what happens when a senior leader, one who served loyally for decades, is retired and then launches his own work? Are the ties of spiritual sonship and institutional loyalty able to hold, or do they fray? For members who had given years of service and loyalty, these were not abstract concerns, they were personal. The stage was now set. A founder had announced the preeminent prophetic event of the year. A longtime deputy had launched a new ministry and had been absent from the previous year's Shiloh. Against that backdrop, rumor and curiosity began to accelerate. Reports of restriction. And this brings us to the most contentious piece of the puzzle. Reports that Abioyo and Bishop Aramu were, in effect, told not to participate at Shiloh 2024, and questions whether that instruction carries forward to Shiloh 2025. Let me be crystal clear. What follows is a careful retelling of what sources, unnamed, but consistent across multiple reports, are saying. These are reports, not court-certified facts. Where the record is uncertain, that uncertainty will be stated. According to various church insiders and social reports that circulated after Shiloh 2024, both Abioyo and Aramu were informed, sometime earlier in the year, that they should not be featured participants at that year's Shiloh. Some accounts say they were discouraged from appearing on the platform. Other accounts say they were asked not to attend at all. The reported reason? The sources are less than unanimous. Some point to procedural protocol following retirement. Others suggest a desire to avoid optics of confusion during an official leadership transition. There's a simple way of translating those two narratives. If true, the procedural explanation says, the church wanted to avoid mixing retired leadership and active leadership on one stage to prevent confusing the institutional message. That is a governance decision, not unheard of in large organizations where clarity of leadership matters. But the interpretive explanation, the one that made headlines and got people talking, is darker. People read a power play. If someone once at the center of influence is told to withdraw from the major annual gathering, observers ask whether that withdrawal is due to politics, personal decisions, or an attempt to protect the founder's legacy. In that frame, the instruction feels less like neutral protocol and more like a signal, this season is over. What fuels such interpretations? A few dynamics. First, optics matter. In a movement where history, personality, and prophetic identity are intertwined, who sits where, and who is seen with whom, becomes symbolic. Fans and critics alike quickly read meaning into a seat left empty. Second, timing matters. Abioyo's rapid launch into a new ministry after retirement made the juxtaposition even more striking. When new work rises quickly, it invites speculation about whether old loyalties have been severed intentionally or inadvertently. Third, silence amplifies rumor. Where public explanation is limited or delayed, people fill gaps with their own narratives. Remember, in the absence of clear, verified public statements, the rumor mill will always supply an answer, and that answer tends to be the most emotionally compelling version, not always the most accurate. To be fair, there's evidence that complicates the idea of a formal ban. Bishop Aramu, asked in mid-2025 about whether he would attend Shiloh 2025, replied that he couldn't vividly say for now, a cautious answer that sounds like the posture of someone navigating a delicate situation rather than someone definitively prohibited. Similarly, some insiders say the practicalities of running a brand new church, scheduling conflicts, pastoral responsibilities, and the desire to build one's own ministry calendar can legitimately keep a recent retiree from appearing at a large event in which they once served. So we have three possibilities, all of which carry different moral and practical implications. A formal restriction was applied. Retired leaders were asked to step back from ceremonial roles at Shiloh to preserve a clear institutional identity. If this is true, it is a governance choice. Whether people agree with it is another matter. A de facto restriction emerged, even if no written instruction existed. Informal pressure, expectations, or decisions by gatekeepers may have made presence difficult or inadvisable. This is the slippery middle ground where accountability and gossip often get confused. Voluntary absence for legitimate reasons, schedules, new ministry commitments, or personal convictions may have led Abioyo and Aramu to avoid Shiloh without being told to do so. Which of these is true? The answer matters for how the public interprets the story. A formal ban would suggest a tightening of control, a voluntary absence would suggest independent pastoral responsibility, and an informal pressure would suggest the gray zone that often brings the most harm, because no one takes responsibility and everyone seizes the narrative. What's most important for viewers to remember as they hear these versions is simple. A rumor is not a verdict. And yet the effect of rumors is real. Whether by design or default, the absence of once central leaders from a major prophetic convocation generates symbolism and questions. And those symbols will be debated for weeks, months, or longer unless the institution speaks clearly. At this moment, Shiloh 2025 stands announced. The founder has set the theme. A global family is preparing, and one of the movement's most recognizable deputies remains a figure of the center of speculation, not because he has spoken loudly, but because his actions have spoken. developments mean for the institution, theological, pastoral, and public relations implications, and will weigh perspectives from supporters, critics, and neutral observers. For now, the question remains open. Will Abioye return to Shiloh platform one day? And if not, what does his absence teach the church about leadership, loyalty, and institutional change? Abioye's new reality. When a leader who once stood at the center of the movement launches a new ministry, that changes the entire equation, practically, pastorally, and symbolically. Let's start with the practical realities. Running a new church is not a hobby. It is a full-time enterprise. There are weekly services to plan, staff to hire and train, administrative systems to put in place, finance and compliance details to manage, and pastoral care that must be overseen. When Bishop Abioye founded Living Word Conquerors Global Assembly, he stepped into the position of senior pastor in his own right. That means responsibilities, scheduling meetings, leadership training, outreach programs, pastoral calendar for December and beyond. December is a busy season in the church calendar everywhere. Many churches schedule mid-year conferences, harvest services, program launches, or end-of-year outreaches. Keep Abioye's new ministry is building its identity. Hosting a major simultaneous program at the same time as Shiloh could fragment his attention and energy. For a founder trying to establish a new congregation and culture, being present and visible at home often takes precedence over attending even prestigious external events. Second, consider the logistical reality. Travel, coordination with viewing centers, pastoral delegations, and the sheer strain on team resources make attending large international events difficult. He may have obligations to visiting guests, outreach plans, or civic engagements tied to his new ministry that simply conflict with full participation at Shiloh. Third, and this is a sensitive but unavoidable point, there's the optics. When a recently retired senior leader attends the founder's major prophetic convocation, people read meaning into that presence. Likewise, when he is absent, people read meaning there too. If Abioye showed up at Shiloh while simultaneously hosting or promoting his own congregational activities, critics could argue he's taking members back and forth, creating divided loyalties. His presence could be interpreted as tacit permission for cross-pollination of followings. His absence could be interpreted as separation. Either way, the optics are powerful. For Abioye himself, the decision to prioritize the launch and consolidation of Living Word Conquerors Global Assembly is understandable. A new ecclesial identity requires cultivation. Leaders who launch new works often set aside invitations and external engagements to give time and space for their new flock to mature. That is a pastoral calculus, not necessarily a political one. Finally, there is the spiritual posture. Some pastors choose to avoid large gatherings led by their former denomination in order to avoid causing confusion among their new members. They prefer a clean break that allows both ministries to grow without passengers shifting between pews. It is a choice made out of pastoral prudence, to protect the new congregation's cohesion and to avoid inadvertently setting up a back-and-forth dynamic that hurts discipleship. So, on the practical, pastoral, and symbolic levels, Abioye's new reality makes attendance at Shiloh complicated, even if he wanted to be present. Bishop Aramu's position. Bishop Thomas Aramu, retired alongside Abioye, gives us a different window into how retired leaders navigate this moment. When asked in mid-2025 whether he would attend Shiloh 2025, his answer was cautious, "I can't vividly say for now." That short sentence tells us a lot. First, it signals uncertainty, which can be driven by multiple factors. Personal health, family obligations, counsel from leadership, or simply a desire to avoid creating public controversy. Aramu's hesitation could be a measured, respectful response while awaiting clarity from the office of the founder or the church's organizing team. Second, it suggests diplomacy. A public yes or no in such a polarized environment can be read as taking a side. By answering cautiously, Aramu preserves relationships on both sides and keeps options open. That posture can be wise for someone who wants to maintain friendships and avoid being drawn into a public dispute. Third, Aramu's response highlights the emotional reality for many retired leaders. Transitions are complicated. Retirement from an organization you served for decades can leave a leader in a liminal place, emotionally attached to the old structure but called to step into a new season of ministry or rest. Publicly committing to or refusing attendance at a high-profile event may feel like announcing an allegiance. For many, it's better to wait until the next season's shape is clearer. Finally, his answer may reflect protocol. When a major convocation is being organized by the founder who remains the public face of the ministry, retired leaders may be waiting to be formally invited, or they may be seeking permission or counsel before appearing publicly. that waiting for a green light is a sign of respect for institutional processes, or, to critics, an indicator of restricted freedom. Either interpretation depends on what the church communicates next. The big questions. We arrive now at the questions everyone is asking. Each one is simple to state and complex to answer. Was Abioye banned? Is his absence voluntary? Is this a clash between loyalty and independence? Was Abioye banned from Shiloh? A formal ban would mean a clear directive from the organizing authority: do not attend. That's a heavy claim. The public record as of now shows reports and insider whispers that retired leaders were asked not to participate in Shiloh 2024, and that they did not appear. But absence alone does not prove a ban. Organizations sometimes ask retired staff to step back from ceremonial roles simply to allow the current leadership to be visible. That is governance, not punishment. If a formal ban were in effect, the consequences are significant: reputational damage, feelings of marginalization among retirees, and possible public backlash. It would be an action that invites scrutiny from members, the media, and the wider Christian family. At the same time, leaders who impose restrictions may argue they are protecting clarity of message and preventing mixed signals during leadership transitions. So, without a formal public statement confirming a ban, it is more prudent to treat claims of banning as unverified. Responsible reporting and commentary should call for evidence, official statements, or an invitation for reconciliation rather than amplify a rumor as fact. Or is his absence voluntary? We've already outlined many legitimate voluntary reasons: scheduling conflicts with new ministry programs, pastoral priorities, travel limitations, and deliberate strategic decisions to shield his new congregation from confusion. Voluntary absence can be both honorable and prudent. In such a scenario, the leader's motives are pastoral and organizational rather than punitive. If Abioye chose to prioritize his nascent ministry, that action also sends a message. But the message is different. It says, "I now have a primary responsibility to my new flock." Many church planters and ministry starters have done the same. They focus on planting and refuse to be a part-time face at their former home to avoid mixed allegiances. Loyalty versus independence, a deeper question. This is the heart of the matter for many observers. The tension has three clear forms. At the other end, critics say the events reveal a risk of centralizing power and sidelining long-time leaders. They raise questions about fairness, optics, and whether institutional decisions might have been handled more transparently. For these voices, the absence of clear public explanation is the root cause of distrust. Critics often demand documentary clarity, timelines, written policies, and independent oversight. Their critique is not always hostile. Many genuinely want to see the church maintain credibility in the broader public sphere and are urging reforms that would strengthen, not weaken, the movement. See neutral observers, contextualizing the pattern. Between these two camps are neutral commentators, scholars, church leaders, and seasoned journalists, who place the incident in a broader context. Megachurches everywhere face growing pains when founder-centric models meet generational change. These observers point out that succession tensions are predictable and that the core issue is how the institution chooses to respond. They often offer pragmatic suggestions rather than polemics: better governance, public rituals of commissioning, and the appointment of independent boards. Social media dynamics and the global audience. Social media has amplified every angle. Clips, memes, and hot takes travel fast, sometimes faster than clarifying statements. The diaspora community, international viewers, and younger Christians are especially active online, and their commentary shapes the reputational contours of the debate. For leaders, that means messages must be timely and clear. Silence leaves a vacuum that social narratives will fill, not always kindly. The media's role. Traditional media outlets, religious blogs, and talk shows also play a role. Some outlets pose tough questions, others seek ratings with sensational headlines. Again, the remedy is simple: proactive, factual communication. When an institution allows speculation to dominate the headlines, it seeds the narrative. Regular briefings, Q&A sessions, and documented policies reduce misunderstanding. Shiloh 2025 is set. The theme, Breaking New Grounds, invites a bold posture of faith, expansion, and new territory. Yet the absence of Bishop Abioye, a man who once stood at the right hand of Bishop Oyedepo, adds an unavoidable shadow of controversy. It raises honest questions about succession, loyalty, institutional governance, and the health of the wider family of faith. But controversy need not be a permanent wound. It can become a catalytic moment for reform and renewal. If Living Faith's leadership chooses transparency, pastoral care, and public rites of blessing and reconciliation, this moment can deepen trust rather than erode it. If critics are met with openness and supporters are invited into conversation rather than silenced, the movement can model how a large church navigates seasons of change with dignity. For members and viewers, the closing challenge is practical. Pray, seek the facts, and press leaders to be clear and compassionate. For leaders, the closing charge is urgent. Steward the mandate faithfully, but steward the people even more carefully. Vision without wise structures can be fragile. Structures without vision can become sterile. The healthiest path is where prophetic calling and institutional wisdom walk together. So as Shiloh 2025 approaches, let the theme be more than a slogan. Let breaking new grounds apply not only to spiritual breakthroughs, but to the hard work of building resilient, transparent, and loving institutions that preserve God's calling across generations.